So we've taken all of our green nitrogenous, love that word, all of our green vegetable scraps, and we've cut them up. If you can see, Linda, come in here close, you can see, not crazy, but it's cut up, smaller pieces. Check this out, the temperature has risen to 122 just by adding the green matter, okay? One of the questions that has been posed in our garden is, what about the corn stalks? When I researched it online, when I've asked people about it, some people say it's carbon, some people say it's nitrogen. It could be brown or it could be green. Right now, this corn stalk is a little bit of both. There's some of it that's brown, there's some of it that's green. If you need nitrogen in your compost and you take it down while it's still green, chop it up finely. You can even put it through some kind of a shredder if you have one. Chop it up and put it in with your green matter. Otherwise, put it to the side, let it dry. You can break it up and add it to your carbon after it's dried. The thing about compost is like a recipe handed down from your mother. It has basic ingredients, but it doesn't matter. You're going to tweak it. You're going to put in what you have. Compost it's really interesting because you can amend it. You can add things. You can, what we're growing here is what's going in the compost. Okay, so use what you have. I'm going to break this down and then we're going to cover it up. We're going to try and get this up to at least 130 and preferably 140. Now, if it stays at 140 degrees, that's considered hot compost, and that is going to kill all of the pathogens and weed seeds that are in the compost. It only needs to stay that hot for a couple of days. And the interesting thing about compost is there's 3 different types of organisms. You've got a cool compost. If your compost doesn't get hot, it's okay. It's still going to decompose. You're still going to be able to use it. It's just going to take longer. The hotter you get it, the faster it's going to break down, the faster you're going to be able to use it, and the more it's going to get rid of all the weed seeds, all the volunteers that sometimes you've seen come up when you've added compost that they didn't completely decompose. Okay, so added that up. Now we're going to throw our carbon right on top. Remember, it's at least a 1-to-1 ratio, and I now have at least 2-3 inches of green matter in there. So I need at least 2 to 3 inches, preferably up to 6, but I'm not going to put 6 inches of soil on top of that. If I had straw and newspaper and peanut shells and a really diverse mix of carbon, maybe leaf mulch, leaves take a long time to break down. So again, we're going to use those sparingly. But I'm not going to go 6 inches. I'm going to be more conservative with it, and I'm going to put 2 to 3 inches. I'm going to take out anything that won't break down and put it right in the garbage. This is also a good time if you've got big sticks. Some of them can stay in there. Some of these will break down. If they're big and thick and very woody, you're going to want to take them out. Put them aside for later. See, there's some cardboard in there that I've broken up. I did make a phone call to our local newspaper to check about their inks. You only want to use newspapers. We only here, we will organic garden, we want to keep it as true to that as we can, that are vegetable-based inks. Providence Journal uses a water-based ink. I'm going to have to do more research on that. Anybody out there that knows more about using that in an organic garden compost, I'd love to hear about it. So I'm going to do some more research about the newspaper. The thing about newspaper is it's not a high quality carbon, so I don't want to use a lot of it anyway. I want to use it sparingly just to diversify the mix a little. A lot of benefits to covering it up right away. It's going to keep down the rodents. It's going to help this green material, this nitrogen, start breaking up right away. If I leave it for a few days, it's just going to delay the process. So I'm going to cover it up right away. Don't need that. the leaf mulch I brought from home, there's a lot of really wonderful worms. This compost is not a worm compost. The worms that you see in it are earthworms, and they live low in the soil, and they burrow, they make airways, they help keep the soil nice and loose. They do eat some of the material and deposit organic matter back into it, but they are not going to eat the compost, the breaking down vegetable scraps. Red wigglers is a different kind of a worm, really great for a small compost unit. These worms, better if I take them out and put them in right into the garden, but we're gonna leave them there. There's enough soil in here for them to be happy. We had a question the other night about chicken manure. Chicken manure in the state of Rhode Island has to be composted in a closed container. Very high in nitrogen. The best thing to do with chicken manure that I've heard is to let it sit. You want to let it cure for a little while before you add it to your compost. Let it dry out a little. When you add it, make sure you add a lot of good carbon to get that balance and help it break down. Really good source of nitrogen, really good for the compost. Again, we'll have to do some more checking to see if we can actually use it here because it's not completely covered. Okay, so now we've got everything nice and covered up. We're still hovering there at around 120 degrees. The next thing I'm going to do, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to water this in just a little. It needs to be damp, not soaking wet. Like I said earlier, it needs to be like a sponge that you've wrung out. If you picked up some of it and squished it in your hand, it should hold together, it shouldn't drip, and it shouldn't crumble. Okay, so we're going to give it a nice coat of water. We're also going to put some water on our resting bin. This bin has been sitting for about a week now untouched. As you can see, there's watermelons growing out of the top of it. Really rich, beautiful soil underneath it. We're hoping to use this bin this fall to lay on top of our crops before we put them to bed in our garden plot. So there you have it, compost at the community garden. Gotta love it.